You wake up and the first thing you feel is not the warmth of morning light or the softness of your sheets. It is the weight of a conversation that happened 3 months ago. The words arrive before your eyes, fully open, as if they have been waiting all night for you to return to consciousness. What they said, what you said, what you should have said. The loop begins before you have taken your first breath of the day. You shower, and the water cannot wash away the memory of a moment when everything changed. You replay it frame by frame, searching for the exact second when it all went wrong. You examine every detail with the precision of a detective reviewing crime scene footage. Except the crime is in the past, and no amount of analysis will change the ending. Still, you look. Still, you search. Still, you hope that this time, somehow, you will find the answer that makes it all make sense. You drive to work and your hands are on the wheel, but your mind is somewhere else entirely. It is in a relationship that ended, a friendship that fractured, a mistake you made that you cannot undo, the betrayal you cannot forgive, the words spoken in anger that you cannot take back, the moment you were humiliated and everyone saw, the decision you got wrong and the consequences that followed. Your body moves through the present, but your attention is locked in the past, replaying the same scenes until the details are worn smooth like stones in a river. This is the ghost you keep feeding, the past you cannot stop visiting, the loop you cannot break. You know it is happening. You are not unaware. You catch yourself mid-replay and think, not again, not this again. I need to stop thinking about this. And for a moment, maybe you do. You redirect your attention to the task in front of you, the person beside you, the life that is actually happening right now. But the past is patient. It waits. And when your guard drops, when you are tired or alone or still, it returns with the same insistence, the same vividness, the same power to pull you out of now and back into then. This is not occasional reflection. This is not healthy processing. This is rumination, and it has taken residence in your mind like an unwelcome tenant who refuses to leave. It is the conversation you have with yourself 1,000 times without ever reaching resolution. It is the problem you try to solve by thinking about it endlessly. Except thinking is not solving, and the more you replay, the deeper you sink. You feel it in your body, the tightness in your chest when the memory surfaces, the knot in your stomach when you relive the shame, the tension in your shoulders that never fully releases, because even when you are laughing with friends or focused on work, part of you is still there, still replaying, still trying to rewrite an ending that has already been written. You feel it in your relationships. Your partner asks what you are thinking, and you say nothing, because how do you explain that you are having a conversation with someone who is no longer in your life? How do you say that you are more present with your ghosts than with the person sitting across from you? They sense your distance. They feel the wall you have built, not to keep them out, but to keep the past in. But walls do not work that way. What you contain also contains you. You feel it in your missed opportunities, the job you did not apply for, because you replayed a past failure until it convinced you that you would fail again. The relationship you did not pursue because you were too busy reviewing the one that ended. The risks you did not take because your mind was occupied with all the times risk didn't pay off. The past doesn't just haunt you. It robs you. It steals your attention, your energy, your belief that the future could be different from what has already happened. You feel it in your joy. Even the good moments are filtered through the lens of old pain. You achieve something, and instead of celebrating, you remember the time you achieved something and it was taken away. You trust someone, and in the back of your mind, you replay the moment trust was broken. You try to be present, to be grateful, to experience happiness without condition. But the past whispers. Remember what happened last time. Remember how this ends. Remember that nothing good lasts. This is the cost of living half in yesterday and half in today. You are never fully anywhere. You are stretched thin across time, trying to be in two places at once, and the result is exhaustion. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix, the kind of tired that comes from carrying weight that was never meant to be carried this long. And here is what makes it worse. You think it is your fault. You think you should be over it by now. You think strong people move on and weak people stay stuck, and because you cannot seem to let go, you must be weak. So you add shame to the weight you are already carrying. You judge yourself for ruminating, which only gives you something else to ruminate about. The loop deepens. The ghost grows stronger. But what if it is not your fault? What if your mind is not broken, but doing exactly what it was designed to do in a world it was not designed for? What if rumination is not a character flaw, but a survival mechanism running in the wrong era, trying to protect you from threats that no longer exist? What if the reason you cannot stop replaying the past is not because you are weak, but because no one ever taught you how to interrupt the cycle? This is where the journey begins. Not with shame, but with understanding. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. Not with the demand that you immediately stop thinking about the past, but with the patient, compassionate work of learning why you replay it in the first place and what you can do to reclaim your mind. By the end of this journey, you will understand the neuroscience of rumination, why your brain holds on to painful memories with such force, why certain moments replay while others fade, why the past can feel more real than the present, and what that reveals about how your mind processes unresolved experience. You will learn to recognize the difference between productive reflection and destructive replay. One moves you forward, the other keeps you stuck. One processes pain into wisdom, the other churns pain into paralysis. You will develop the ability to notice when you have slipped into the loop and the tools to step out of it, not through force, but through practiced redirection. You will discover a framework that maps your growth from automatic rumination to conscious awareness, from awareness to interruption, from interruption to integration. You will see where you are on that path and what the next step looks like. Not perfection, not the complete absence of difficult thoughts, but the ability to hold those thoughts without being consumed by them. You will gain practical, repeatable methods for breaking the cycle in real time, techniques grounded in neuroscience and proven through research, tools you can use in the grocery store, in traffic, in the middle of the night when sleep will not come, because your mind will not quiet. Simple protocols that create space between the trigger and the spiral, giving you a moment of choice where before there was only automatic reaction. You will build the foundations for long-term freedom, not through willpower alone, but through the design of a life that supports mental clarity, sleep that restores, movement that releases, connection that contextualizes, purpose that redirects energy from endless analysis to meaningful creation. You will learn that freedom is not found in a single insight, but constructed through 1,000 small, intentional decisions. You will understand that this is not about forgetting. Memory is not the enemy. The past is part of your story, and some of it holds wisdom you need. This is about learning to remember without reliving, to honor what happened without being trapped by it, to carry the lessons forward without carrying the weight. This is about reclaiming your attention, your peace, your presence, your ability to be here, now, in this moment, in this life, with the people who are actually in front of you, instead of the ghosts you keep entertaining. This is about becoming the author of your own mind, instead of a passive audience to an endless rerun. The ghost you have been feeding is not the past itself. It is the part of you that believes, if you think about it long enough, hard enough, painfully enough, you will finally find the closure, the answer, the resolution that makes it all okay. But rumination doesn't lead to resolution. It leads to exhaustion. And the only way out is not through more thinking, but through a different relationship with thought itself. You are not broken. You are stuck, and stuck is not permanent. Stuck is a pattern, and patterns can be interrupted, reshaped, replaced. You have been training your brain to replay the past. Now you will train it to return to the present. Not all at once, not perfectly, but progressively, patiently, with the same commitment you have given to the loop. This journey will require honesty. You will have to look at why you replay certain moments and not others. What you are searching for, what you are avoiding, what the rumination is protecting you from feeling or facing. This will not always be comfortable. Growth rarely is. But discomfort with direction is different from discomfort without it. One leads somewhere. The other just hurts. This journey will require practice. You will not read these words and suddenly be free. You will stumble. You will catch yourself replaying and feel frustrated that you are still doing it. You will have days when the past feels as heavy as it ever did. This is normal. This is part of the process. Progress is not measured by the absence of difficult thoughts, but by how quickly you notice them and how skillfully you respond. This journey will require compassion. The voice that criticizes you for ruminating is often the same voice that triggered the rumination in the first place. You cannot shame yourself into healing. You cannot berate yourself into peace. The way forward is gentler than that. It is the way you would guide a friend, the way you would speak to someone you love who is struggling. That is the voice you will need to cultivate for yourself. The past will always be part of your story, but it does not have to be the only story you tell. You are more than what happened to you, more than the mistakes you made, more than the words you wish you could take back or the moments you wish you could redo. You are also this moment, and this one, and the one coming next. You are the person reading these words right now, capable of change, worthy of peace, deserving of a mind that serves you instead of trapping you. The journey starts here. Not in the past you keep replaying, but in the present you are about to reclaim. The present you are about to reclaim has been slipping through your fingers for longer than you realize. Let me show you what that looks like in the life you are living right now. You stand in the shower and the water runs over your skin, but you are not there. You are back in that conversation 6 months ago when the person you loved told you it was over. You replay their words with perfect recall, examining the tone, the pauses, the moments when they looked away. You dissect every sentence for hidden meaning. Did they hesitate before they said they did not love you anymore? Was there a flicker of doubt you could have seized if only you had said something different? You run through alternate scripts in your mind. If you had been calmer, if you had been more vulnerable, if you had fought harder or let go sooner. The water turns cold, and you realize you have been standing there for 20 minutes, having the same argument with someone who is no longer in your life, trying to win a conversation that already ended. You walk into a meeting, and your colleagues are waiting. This is the moment you have prepared for. You know your material. You have rehearsed. But as you stand to present, your mind catapults backward to the presentation 3 years ago, when you stumbled over your words and someone in the back row laughed. You remember the heat rising in your face, the way your hands shook, the long silence that felt like drowning. Your body does not know that moment is over. Your heart rate spikes. Your palms sweat. The shame floods your system as if it is happening right now. Not then. You open your mouth to speak, and your voice sounds smaller than it should, because part of you is still standing in that room 3 years ago, failing in front of everyone who matters. You sit at the dinner table with your child, and they are telling you about their day, but you are not fully listening. You are reviewing the moment last week when you lost your patience and yelled. You see their face again, the hurt in their eyes, the way they went quiet. You replay your words, and each time they sound harsher, crueler, more damaging. You are convinced you have broken something in them that cannot be fixed. You wonder if this is the moment they will remember when they are older, the moment that defines their childhood, the moment they realize their parent was not safe. Your child laughs at something and reaches for your hand, and you smile. But inside, you are cataloguing every mistake you have made, building a case against yourself, convinced that you are failing them in ways you cannot even see yet. This is what rumination looks like when it takes root. It is not confined to one area of your life. It infiltrates everything. It waits for the quiet moments when your defenses are down and your mind is unoccupied, and then it fills the space with endless replay. You are driving, and the road is familiar, the route automatic, and your mind drifts. Not to pleasant daydreams or creative thoughts, but to the argument you had with your friend. You review what you said, what they said, the moment the conversation turned. You imagine what you should have said instead. You rehearse the apology you might give or the boundary you should have set. You play out future conversations that may never happen. You arrive at your destination and realize you do not remember the drive. You are somewhere else entirely. You were in the past, trying to fix something that is already broken, or preparing for conflict that may never come. You cook dinner, and your hands move through the familiar motions, chopping vegetables, stirring the pot, but your attention is locked on the email you sent this afternoon. You replay the words, analyzing the tone. Did you sound too harsh? Too passive? Will they misinterpret what you meant? You imagine their response, running through scenarios. What if they are angry? What if they ignore you? What if this ruins everything? The food burns because you were not watching it. You were watching a future that has not happened and a past you cannot change. You lie in bed at 3 a.m, and sleep will not come because your mind will not stop. You replay the day, the week, the year, every conversation, every decision, every moment when you could have done better. The darkness amplifies everything. The mistakes feel larger, the regrets sharper, the what-ifs endless. You know you need to sleep. You know tomorrow will be harder if you do not rest. But the loop will not stop, and fighting it only makes it stronger. So you lie there, exhausted but wired, reviewing a life you cannot rewind, searching for answers that thinking will not provide. This is the physical toll of living in your head. The tension headaches that start at the base of your skull and spread like a slow ache through your temples. The knot between your shoulder blades that never fully releases because your body is always braced for impact, always preparing for the next thing to go wrong. The disrupted sleep that leaves you foggy and irritable, moving through your days in a haze of exhaustion that coffee cannot touch. The constant, low-grade anxiety that hums in the background like static, making it hard to focus, hard to be present, hard to experience joy without the nagging sense that something is wrong. Your body is paying the price for a mind that will not rest. The cortisol flooding your system, keeping you in a state of perpetual alert. The shallow breathing that comes with chronic stress. The digestive issues, the tight chest, the immune system weakened by months or years of internal strain. You feel tired in a way that sleep does not fix because the exhaustion is not just physical. It is the weariness of carrying unresolved pain, of thinking the same thoughts in endless circles, of trying to solve problems that do not have solutions. Rumination does not just exhaust you, it erodes you. It wears away at your confidence like water on stone, slowly, persistently, until you no longer recognize yourself. You used to trust your judgment. Now you second-guess every decision because you have replayed your past mistakes so many times that they feel like proof of your incompetence. You catastrophize. You assume the worst. You interpret neutral interactions as negative because your mind is trained to scan for danger, for rejection, for evidence that you were right to expect disappointment. You used to take risks. Now you play it safe because your mind has convinced you that risk equals pain, and pain is something you can avoid if you just stay small enough, quiet enough, invisible enough. You have replayed failure so many times that the memory of it feels more real than the possibility of success. So you do not try. You do not reach. You do not put yourself in positions where you might be hurt again, and in doing so, you guarantee that you will stay exactly where you are. You used to see the world with clarity. Now you see it through the filter of old wounds. Every new relationship is viewed with suspicion because you replay the betrayal. Every opportunity is met with hesitation because you replay the time you failed. Every compliment is dismissed because you replay the criticism. You are not experiencing life as it is. You are experiencing life as you expect it to be, based on what has already happened, and that expectation shapes everything. This is the filtered reality of rumination. You are not seeing the present. You are seeing the past projected onto the present, and the two blur together until you cannot tell the difference. Someone is late, and you assume they do not care, because someone else was late once, and it meant they did not care. Someone gives you feedback, and you hear it as condemnation, because feedback once felt like condemnation, and you never processed the difference. Someone loves you, and you wait for them to leave, because someone you loved left, and you replay that ending until it feels inevitable. The social cost of this is quiet but devastating. You are in the room, but you are not present. You are with people, but you are conversing with ghosts. Your partner reaches for you, and you flinch, not because of what they did, but because of what someone else did years ago. They ask what is wrong, and you say nothing, because how do you explain that you are reliving a pain they didn't cause? They feel your distance, They sense the wall. They wonder what they did wrong. And the truth is they did nothing. But you cannot let them in, because part of you is still locked in a past relationship, replaying the betrayal, protecting yourself from a hurt that is not coming from them. You sit with friends, and they share good news, and you smile, but you do not celebrate. Not fully, not without reservation, because you are waiting for the other shoe to drop. You replay every time something good turned bad. Every time joy was followed by loss. Every time you let your guard down and got hurt. So you keep your guard up. You hold back your happiness. You temper your excitement with caution, and your friends feel it. They feel that you are not fully with them, that some part of you is elsewhere, waiting for disaster. You work with colleagues, and they offer you a new project, a stretch assignment, a chance to grow, and you say no. Not out loud, maybe, but inside. You say no because you are replaying the time you took on something new and failed publicly. You remember how it felt. You remember the shame. And the fear of experiencing that again is stronger than the desire to succeed. So you self-sabotage. You play small. You stay in your comfort zone, not because it is comfortable, but because past failure feels safer than future disappointment. At least you know what that pain feels like. At least it is familiar. This is what rumination steals from you. Not just time, not just energy, but possibility, connection, growth, the ability to be fully alive in the moments you are given. You are so busy replaying what already happened that you miss what is happening now. The child who wants your attention, the partner who wants your presence, the opportunity that will not wait for you to finish processing the past, the joy that is available right now in this imperfect, unrepeatable moment. And the cruelest part is that you know this. You are aware that you are stuck. You tell yourself to let it go, to move on, to stop thinking about it. But awareness alone does not stop the loop. Knowing you should not ruminate does not teach you how to interrupt it. So you stay trapped, cycling between the replay and the guilt of replaying, between the past and the shame of not being over it yet. You are exhausted. You are eroding. You are living half a life, stretched thin across time, never fully here, never fully free. And you wonder if it will always be this way. If this is just who you are now. If the past has such a grip on you that the present will always feel secondary, optional, less real than the memories you cannot escape. But it does not have to be this way. What you are experiencing is not permanent. It is a pattern, and patterns can be changed, not through force, not through willpower alone, but through understanding why this happens, and learning what to do when it does. Understanding why this happens begins with understanding your brain, not as a failure, not as something broken that needs fixing, but as an ancient system doing exactly what it was designed to do in a world it was not designed for. Your brain is not malfunctioning when it replays the past. It is trying to protect you. When something painful happens, when you experience loss or betrayal or failure or humiliation, your brain does not categorize it as a random event. It marks it. It flags it as important information. It treats it like data that could save your life. Because for most of human history, that is exactly what painful experiences were. They were threats to survival, and the individuals who remembered them, who analyzed them, who adjusted their behavior based on them, were the ones who lived long enough to pass on their genes. Your ancestors survived because they remembered where the predator lurked. They survived because they learned which plants were poison after watching someone else eat them and fall ill. They survived because they remembered the territory where a rival tribe attacked, the behavior that preceded violence, the signs that preceded danger. The brain that could replay a threatening experience, extract the pattern, and avoid it in the future was the brain that kept its owner alive. You carry that brain. The same neural architecture that helped your ancestors navigate a world of physical threats is now navigating a world of emotional ones. And it is using the same tools. When you experience rejection, your brain treats it like a predator. When you make a mistake at work, your brain treats it like eating a poisonous plant. When a relationship ends, your brain treats it like losing access to essential resources. It replays these experiences not to torture you, but to teach you, to make sure you do not make the same mistake again, to keep you safe. This is the root of rumination. It is not cruelty. It is caution. It is your brain doing what evolution trained it to do. Learn from pain so you can avoid it in the future. But here is the problem. The threats have changed. Your ancestors faced dangers that were concrete, immediate, and often life-threatening. A predator in the brush, a scarcity of food, a physical attack from an enemy. These were problems that required physical solutions. Run, fight, hide, find new territory. The brain that obsessed over these threats and developed strategies to avoid them was doing essential work. You face dangers that are abstract, ongoing, and emotional. Rejection, criticism, uncertainty, loss of status, relationship conflict. These are real problems, but they are not the kind of problems that rumination can solve. You cannot outrun rejection. You cannot fight off criticism with a spear. You cannot hide from the possibility of future pain. And yet your brain tries. It replays the experience, searching for the pattern, trying to develop a strategy that will protect you next time. Except there is no next time. The moment is over. The relationship has ended. The mistake has been made. The words have been spoken. And no amount of mental replay will change what happened. But your brain does not know that. It is still trying to extract the lesson, still searching for the answer, still attempting to solve a problem that thinking cannot solve. This is why rumination feels so persistent. Your brain believes it is doing important work. It believes that if it just thinks hard enough, long enough, thoroughly enough, it will find the insight that keeps you safe. And every time you engage with the loop, every time you replay the conversation or the failure or the betrayal, you reinforce the neural pathway that says, this is important, this needs attention, this is not finished. The brain that replays is not a broken brain. It is a vigilant brain. It is a brain wired for survival in an environment where threats were physical and patterns were life-saving. It is doing what it was designed to do. The problem is not the mechanism. The problem is the mismatch between the tool and the task. This vigilance is amplified by what neuroscientists call the negativity bias. Your brain is hardwired to pay more attention to negative experiences than positive ones. It is wired to remember them more vividly, to hold on to them longer, to give them more weight in your decision-making. This is not pessimism. This is evolution. A positive experience in the ancestral environment was valuable. Finding food, forming an alliance, experiencing pleasure. These were good. But missing out on them didn't kill you. A negative experience, however, could be fatal. Ignoring a threat, failing to recognize danger, dismissing a warning sign could mean death. So the brains that survived were the brains that prioritized the negative. that remembered the bad more than the good, that scanned for danger more than opportunity. You inherited that bias. It is why one critical comment can overshadow 10 compliments, why one mistake can feel more significant than a dozen successes, why one betrayal can make you question every relationship. Your brain is not being irrational, it is being cautious. It is prioritizing the information it believes will keep you safe, and that information is almost always the negative. This is why replaying painful experiences feels so automatic. Your brain is not choosing to focus on the bad. It is wired to focus on the bad. The breakup gets more attention than the good. Years that preceded it. The failure gets more replay than the times you succeeded. The criticism loops endlessly while the praise fades quickly. Not because you are ungrateful or broken, but because your brain is doing what evolution trained it to do. Prioritize threat detection over celebration. And there is another layer to this, the loop of incomplete processing. When an experience ends with resolution, your brain can file it away. The problem was identified. The solution was found. The lesson was learned. The story has an ending. Your brain can mark it as complete and move on. But when an experience ends without resolution, without closure, without a sense of control or understanding, your brain does not know how to file it. It does not have an ending. So it keeps the file open. It keeps returning to it, searching for the missing piece, trying to create the closure that the experience itself did not provide. This is why you replay the conversation that ended abruptly, with things left unsaid. Why you obsess over the relationship that ended without explanation. Why you cannot stop thinking about the mistake you made when you do not understand why you made it. Why you ruminate on the conflict that was never resolved. Your brain is searching for completion. It is trying to close the loop. And until it finds that closure, it will keep revisiting the experience, hoping that this time, somehow, the answer will appear. This loop is compounded by stress. When you are under chronic stress, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thought and perspective, becomes less active. Meanwhile, the amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for fear and threat detection, becomes hyperactive. You lose the ability to put experiences in context, to see them clearly, to regulate your emotional response. Everything feels more threatening. Everything feels more urgent. The past looms larger because your brain is in survival mode, scanning for danger, and old wounds register as present threats. Trauma intensifies this even further. A traumatic experience overwhelms the brain's ability to process it in real time. The memory gets stored in fragments, in sensations, and emotions rather than coherent narrative. And because it was never fully processed, the brain keeps trying to process it. It replays the trauma, not as memory, but as if it is happening now. The body responds with the same fear, the same panic, the same physiological arousal. This is not rumination. This is unprocessed trauma cycling through your system, trying to find resolution that therapy and time and support can provide, but that thinking alone cannot. Perfectionism adds another layer. If you were raised in an environment where mistakes were punished harshly, where failure meant shame or rejection or loss of love, your brain learned that errors are not just problems to solve. They are threats to your safety and belonging. So when you make a mistake now, your brain does not see it as a normal part of learning. It sees it as evidence that you are not good enough, that you will be rejected, that you are in danger. It replays the mistake obsessively, not to learn from it, but to punish you for it, to make sure you never do it again, to prove that you should have known better. And if you grew up in an environment that was unpredictable, where you could not control outcomes, where bad things happened without warning or reason, your brain learned that the world is unsafe and that vigilance is necessary. So it scans constantly. It replays endlessly. It searches for patterns even when there are none, because the alternative, accepting that some things are random and uncontrollable, feels more dangerous than the exhaustion of constant analysis. This is the root cause of rumination. It is not a character flaw. It is not evidence of weakness or inability to cope. It is a survival mechanism running in the wrong era. It is a brain designed to remember physical threats, applying that same mechanism to emotional pain. It is the negativity bias doing what it was designed to do. It is the loop of incomplete processing, searching for closure that may never come. It is stress and trauma and perfectionism and unpredictability, all amplifying the brain's natural tendency to prioritize the negative and replay the unresolved. You are not broken. Your brain is not malfunctioning. It is working exactly as it was designed to work. The problem is not the brain. The problem is that the design is ancient and the world is new. You are using Stone Age tools to solve modern problems, and those tools were never meant for this kind of work. Understanding this changes everything. It replaces shame with compassion. It replaces the belief that you should just get over it with the understanding that your brain is following predictable patterns, patterns that made sense in one context but create suffering in another. It means that the solution is not to berate yourself for ruminating, but to learn how to work with your brain, to interrupt the patterns gently, to give your brain the closure and safety it is searching for in ways that thinking alone cannot provide. You did not choose this. You did not fail to move on because you are weak. You are ruminating because your brain is trying to protect you, using the only methods it knows. And now that you understand why it happens, you can begin to learn how to respond differently. Not by fighting your brain, but by teaching it new patterns. Not by forcing yourself to stop thinking, but by redirecting that energy toward processing, toward resolution, toward the present moment where actual safety lives. The present moment where actual safety lives is closer than you think, but the journey to reclaim it unfolds in stages. Understanding where you are on this path and what the next step looks like gives you a map. Not a demand for perfection, but a framework that shows you how growth actually happens, how freedom is built one layer at a time. There are 4 stages in the journey from mental captivity to mental freedom. You will recognize yourself in at least one of them. Maybe you move between them depending on the day, the level of stress you are carrying, how much sleep you got, or what triggered you. That is normal. Progress is not a straight line. It is a spiral. You will revisit earlier stages, but each time you do, you will move through them faster, with more awareness, with more skill. The first stage is the loop. This is where rumination has complete control. You are trapped in automatic replay, and you do not even realize it is happening until hours have passed. You wake up thinking about the past. You shower replaying conversations. You drive reviewing mistakes. You lie awake at night analyzing decisions that cannot be undone. The past feels more real than the present because you are spending more time there. You are more familiar with the details of what happened than with what is happening now. In this stage, you believe that thinking will solve the problem. You believe that if you just analyze the situation from one more angle, replay the conversation one more time, review your mistakes with enough scrutiny, You will finally understand why it happened and how to prevent it from happening again. You believe that the answer is hidden somewhere in the details and that your job is to find it. So you search, you replay, you dissect, and the loop deepens because every time you engage with it, you tell your brain that this is important work, that this deserves your attention, that this is not finished. You do not see the pattern yet. You do not recognize that you have been thinking the same thoughts for weeks or months. You do not notice that the replaying is not bringing you closer to resolution, it is keeping you stuck. You are inside the storm and you cannot see the edges of it. You think this is just what thinking feels like. You think everyone does this. You do not yet understand that there is a difference between productive reflection and destructive rumination. This stage feels heavy, exhausting, inescapable. You are living in two timelines at once, and it fractures your attention, your energy, your sense of presence. People talk to you, and you are only half listening. You are at work, but your mind is somewhere else. You are physically in your life, but mentally you are trapped in a moment that already ended, trying to rewrite an ending that is already written. The second stage is the observer. This is where awareness begins. You start to notice when you are replaying the past. You catch yourself mid-loop and think, I am doing it again. I am ruminating. The thought is no longer invisible. The pattern is no longer automatic. You can see it now, even if you cannot stop it yet. In this stage, you recognize the loop, but you still feel powerless to interrupt it. You know you are ruminating. You know it is not helping. You can even predict when it will happen, the triggers that pull you back into replay. But knowing does not equal stopping. The pull is still strong. The past still feels urgent, important, impossible to ignore. You try to redirect your attention, and it snaps back like a rubber band. You tell yourself to stop thinking about it, and the thought gets louder, more insistent, more consuming. This is frustrating. You have awareness now, which feels like progress, but you also have the added layer of knowing that you are stuck and not being able to do anything about it. You watch yourself ruminate. You observe the loop. You feel the exhaustion and the shame of not being able to let go, and that shame becomes another thing to ruminate about. Why can I not stop thinking about this? What is wrong with me? Why am I still here? But this stage is essential. Awareness is the foundation for everything that comes next. You cannot change a pattern you do not see. You cannot interrupt a habit you do not recognize. The observer stage is where you build the muscle of noticing. You learn to catch the loop earlier. You identify the triggers. You start to understand the difference between a thought that serves you and a thought that traps you. This is not failure. This is the necessary groundwork for growth. This stage feels like watching yourself from a distance. You are aware of the rumination, but not yet skilled at stopping it. You can name it. You can see it happening. But the momentum is still stronger than your ability to redirect. You are learning. You are building capacity. You are preparing for the next stage. The third stage is the interrupter. This is where you develop tools to break the cycle. You no longer just observe the rumination. You actively interrupt it. You have learned techniques to redirect your attention, to challenge distorted thoughts, to create space between the trigger and the spiral. The past still calls, but you no longer answer every time. In this stage, you catch yourself replaying, and you do something about it. You notice the loop starting, and you use a grounding technique. You feel your feet on the floor. You name 5 things you can see. You take 3 deep breaths. You redirect your attention to a task, to the present moment, to something that requires focus. The rumination does not disappear instantly, but you are no longer passive. You are no longer a captive audience. You have agency. You learn to question the thoughts that fuel the loop. Is this thought helping me solve a problem, or is it causing me pain? Am I processing, or am I replaying? Is there something I can do right now to resolve this, or am I stuck in mental rehearsal? You challenge the distortions. You notice when you are catastrophizing, when you are assuming the worst, when you are replaying a narrative that is not entirely accurate. You do not fight the thoughts. You redirect them. You offer your brain something else to focus on. This stage requires practice. You will not interrupt the loop every time. You will catch yourself hours into rumination and feel frustrated that you did not notice sooner. You will use a technique, and it will work one day and fail the next. You will have good weeks and hard weeks. This is normal. You are building a new habit, and habits take repetition. Every time you interrupt the loop, you weaken the old neural pathway and strengthen a new one. Every time you redirect, you teach your brain that there is another option, another way to respond. This stage feels empowering, but also fragile. You have tools now, but they are new, and sometimes they do not feel strong enough to match the pull of the past. You have moments of freedom, stretches of time when you are fully present, fully here, and then something triggers you, and you are back in the loop. But the difference is that now you know how to get out. It might take time, it might take effort, but you are no longer trapped. You have a way forward. The 4th stage is the author. This is where you have integrated your past into your story without being controlled by it. You can remember without reliving. You can look back without being pulled back. You have processed the pain into wisdom. The past is a chapter in your life, not the whole book. In this stage, rumination no longer has automatic power over you. You think about the past, but it does not consume you. You reflect on what happened, but you do not replay it obsessively. You have learned the lessons. You have done the processing. You have made peace. Not necessarily with what happened, but with the fact that it is over, and you survived it. You have grieved what was lost. You have forgiven what can be forgiven. You have accepted what cannot be changed. You are the author of your own narrative now. You decide what the past means. You decide which stories you tell yourself and which ones you let go. You recognize that memory is not fixed, that the way you frame an experience shapes how it affects you, and you choose frames that give you agency, that honor your resilience, that see growth instead of only failure. This does not mean the past never hurts. It does not mean you never think about painful experiences. But when you do, you are not trapped. You can visit the memory and then leave it. You can honor what you went through without being defined by it. You have integrated the experience into a larger story, a story that includes struggle but also includes strength, that includes loss but also includes survival, that includes mistakes but also includes learning. This stage feels like freedom, not the absence of difficult thoughts, but the ability to hold them without being consumed. You are present more often than not. You are engaged with your life as it is, not as it was or as you wish it had been. You have reclaimed your attention. You have reclaimed your peace. You are here, now, in this moment, with all its imperfect possibility. These stages are not rigid. You will not move through them in perfect order and stay there. You might be in the interrupter stage for months and then experience a significant loss or trauma and find yourself back in the loop. That is not regression. That is life. Stress, exhaustion, grief, major transitions, all of these can pull you back into earlier patterns. But even when that happens, you do not start from zero. You have the awareness. You have the tools. You know what the next step is. And you will move through the stages faster than you did the first time. Progress is not about never ruminating again. It is about noticing sooner, interrupting more skillfully, and recovering faster. It is about building the capacity to be present even when the past is loud. It is about learning to hold complexity, to grieve and grow at the same time, to remember and move forward simultaneously. Where you are right now is exactly where you need to be. If you are in the loop, your next step is awareness. Start noticing when you ruminate. If you are the observer, your next step is learning tools for interruption. If you are the interrupter, your next step is consistency and integration. If you are the author, your next step is maintaining the practices that keep you grounded and supporting others who are still in earlier stages. You are not behind. You are on the path. And every stage has value. Every stage teaches you something essential. The loop teaches you humility. The observer teaches you awareness. The interrupter teaches you agency. The author teaches you integration. You need all of it. You will revisit all of it. And each time you do, you will be a little wiser, a little stronger, a little more free, a little wiser, a little stronger, a little more free. That freedom is built through practice, and practice begins with a tool you can use right now, in this moment, wherever you are. This is the redirect protocol. It is simple. It is repeatable. It works when you are in traffic, in bed, in a meeting, in the middle of the night when sleep will not come. It is not about forcing the past out of your mind. It is about creating space between the trigger and the spiral, giving yourself a moment of choice where before there was only automatic reaction. The protocol has 4 steps. Learn them, practice them, use them until they become as automatic as the rumination itself. Step 1 is name it. When you notice yourself replaying the past, speak it aloud or silently in your mind. Say the words, "I am ruminating." That is all. No judgment, no shame, no analysis of why you are doing it or how long it has been happening. Just name it. I am ruminating. This simple act breaks the trance of automatic thinking. Rumination operates in invisibility. It pulls you into the loop without announcing itself. One moment you are driving to work and the next you are replaying an argument from 3 days ago, and you did not notice the transition. You were absorbed. You were inside the thought, identified with it, believing it was essential, urgent, real. Naming it creates distance. It makes the thought visible. It transforms "I am a failure" into "I am having the thought that I am a failure." It changes "this will never get better" into "I am ruminating about this not getting better." You are no longer the thought. You are the person observing the thought. And that distinction is everything. It creates a crack in the loop, a moment of awareness where interruption becomes possible. You do not need to name it perfectly. You do not need to understand why the thought appeared or what triggered it. You just need to notice it and name it. I am replaying the past. I am stuck in a loop. I am ruminating. The words themselves are the intervention. Step 2 is grounded. Once you have named the rumination, anchor yourself in the present moment using sensory input. Rumination lives in abstraction, in the realm of thoughts and stories and interpretations. The present moment is concrete. It is physical. It is immediate. And your body is always in the present, even when your mind is elsewhere. Feel your feet on the floor, not as a concept, but as a sensation. Press them down. Notice the weight, the texture, the temperature. Are you wearing shoes or are you barefoot? Is the floor hard or soft, cold or warm? This is not metaphorical grounding. This is literal grounding. Your feet are here, now, in contact with the earth, and that contact pulls you out of your head and into your body. Notice 5 things you can see. Look around the room or the space you are in and name them. The light coming through the window, the book on the table, the color of the wall, the shape of a tree outside, the texture of the fabric on the chair. Describe them in detail, not quickly, not as a checklist, but with attention. This is not busy work. This is anchoring. Every detail you notice is a tether to the present. Describe the temperature of the air on your skin. Is it warm or cool? Is there a breeze? Can you feel the fabric of your shirt against your shoulders? The weight of your hands resting in your lap? The sensation of breath moving in and out of your chest? Your body is a constant source of present moment data. Use it. Rumination pulls you into the past by making it feel more real than the present. Grounding reverses that. It makes the present undeniable. It reminds your nervous system that you are here, now, safe, breathing, alive. Not in the conversation that ended. Not in the moment you failed. Not in the betrayal or the mistake or the loss. Here, in this room, in this body, in this moment. Step 3 is challenge it. Once you are grounded, ask yourself one question. Is thinking about this right now helping me solve a problem or causing me pain? This is not about whether the thought is true. It is not about whether you have a right to think about it. It is about function. Is this thought serving you or is it trapping you? If the answer is that it is helping you solve a problem, then continue. If you are thinking about a difficult conversation because you are planning how to approach it, that is productive. If you are reviewing a mistake because you are identifying what to do differently next time, that is learning. If you are processing grief because you need to feel it in order to move through it, that is healthy. Productive thinking has direction. It moves you toward resolution, toward understanding, toward action. But if the answer is that the thought is causing you pain without offering a solution, then it is optional. You do not have to think it. You do not have to engage with it. You can choose to redirect your attention, not because the thought is wrong or invalid, but because it is not helping you right now. This is a radical idea for many people. You have been taught that thoughts demand attention, that if something enters your mind, it must be important, that ignoring a thought is avoidance or denial. But not all thoughts are useful. Not all thoughts deserve your time. Some thoughts are just noise. Some thoughts are the brain's attempt to solve a problem it has already solved 100 times. Some thoughts are the residue of stress or exhaustion or old patterns that no longer serve you. Challenging the thought is not about dismissing your pain. It is about discernment. It is about recognizing that thinking about the past is not the same as processing the past, and that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to stop rehearsing pain and start practicing presence. Step 4 is redirect it. Give your mind a task. Do not fight the thought. Do not try to suppress it or push it away. That only makes it stronger. Instead, Redirect the energy. Give your attention something else to focus on, something that requires enough engagement that the rumination cannot run in the background. Count backward from 100 by sevens. 100, 93, 86, 79. This is harder than it sounds. It requires focus. It occupies the part of your brain that was ruminating and gives it a different job. You cannot count and replay at the same time. Describe the room you are in with as much detail as possible. The color of the walls, the objects on the surfaces, the way the light falls, the sounds you can hear, the smells in the air. Make it vivid. Make it specific. This is not distraction. This is redirection. You are training your brain to focus on what is actually in front of you instead of what is behind you. Focus on your breath for 10 cycles. Breathe in slowly through your nose, counting to 4. Hold for a moment. Breathe out slowly through your mouth, counting to 6. Notice the sensation of the air moving in and out. Notice the rise and fall of your chest. If your mind wanders back to the rumination, that is fine. Notice it. Name it. Bring your attention back to the breath. This is the practice. The goal is not to empty your mind. The goal is to shift your focus. You are not erasing the thought. You are choosing not to feed it. And every time you redirect, you weaken the neural pathway that says rumination is the default response to discomfort. You build a new pathway that says, I can notice the thought and choose where to place my attention. Let me show you how this works in real life. You are sitting in traffic and the car in front of you is not moving. You have nowhere to be in a hurry, but your mind doesn't care. It drifts to the argument you had with your partner this morning. You replay what they said, what you said, the tone, the look on their face. You start constructing what you should have said, how you should have responded. You imagine the conversation continuing, escalating, ending badly. Your chest tightens. Your hands grip the steering wheel. You are not in traffic anymore. You are back in the kitchen, fighting. Then you remember the protocol. You name it. I am ruminating. Just those 3 words, and the trance breaks. You ground it. You feel your hands on the wheel. You notice the texture of the leather. You look around and name 5 things. The red car 2 lanes over. The billboard with the faded letters. The tree line in the distance. The grey sky. The reflection in your rearview mirror. You are here, in this car, in this moment. You challenge it. Is thinking about this argument right now helping me solve a problem or causing me pain? You realize you are not planning what to say later. You are just replaying what already happened over and over, making yourself feel worse. It is not productive. It is optional. You redirect it. You count backward from 100 by sevens. The numbers require focus. The rumination fades into the background. By the time you reach 72, the traffic has started moving, and your mind is no longer in the kitchen. It is here, driving, present. You are lying in bed at midnight and you cannot sleep because you are reviewing the exam you failed. You replay the questions you got wrong. You see the red marks. You imagine your professor's disappointment. You think about your GPA, your future, your worth as a student. The anxiety builds. Your heart races. You check the clock. 12:30. You need to sleep. You have class in the morning. But the thoughts will not stop. You use the protocol. You name it. I am ruminating about the exam. You ground it. You feel the weight of the blanket on your body. You notice the pillow under your head. You feel the cool air on your face. You listen to the sounds outside your window. A car passing, the hum of the heater. You are here, in this bed, in this moment. Not in the exam room. You challenge it. Is thinking about this helping me solve a problem? You realize you cannot change your grade by replaying the test. You can study differently next time. You can talk to your professor tomorrow. But right now, at midnight, there is nothing productive about this loop. It is just pain. You redirect it. You focus on your breath. In for 4. Out for 6. In for 4. Out for 6. You count 10 cycles. Your mind wanders back to the exam. You notice it. You do not judge it. You bring your attention back to the breath. By the 15th cycle, your body starts to relax. Sleep is no longer impossible. You are preparing for a meeting, and instead of reviewing your notes, you are reliving the last time you presented and someone questioned your data. You remember the heat in your face, the stumble in your response, the silence in the room. You imagine it happening again. You imagine failing again. Your confidence drains before you even walk into the room. You stop. You name it. I'm ruminating about past failure. You ground it. You stand up. You feel your feet on the floor. You look out the window and describe what you see in detail. The building across the street, the shape of the clouds, the movement of people below. You are here, not in that past meeting. You challenge it. Is this helping me prepare, or is it making me anxious? You realize you are not reviewing your material. You are just scaring yourself with a memory. It is not productive. You redirect it. You pick up your notes and read them aloud. You describe your findings in detail. You practice your opening line. You give your mind the task of preparation instead of replay. By the time you walk into the meeting, you are focused on what you are about to say, not what you said before. This is the redirect protocol. 4 steps. Name it. Ground it. Challenge it. Redirect it. Simple enough to remember. Powerful enough to change the pattern. Practice it until it becomes reflex. Until the moment you notice rumination, you know exactly what to do next. The moment you notice rumination, you know exactly what to do next. The redirect protocol gives you a foundation, a way to interrupt the loop in real time. But mastery requires more than one tool. It requires a toolkit, a collection of methods that address different facets of rumination, different triggers, different moments in your day. These are the advanced tools that deepen your practice and expand your capacity to live in the present. Start with the worry window. This is one of the most powerful techniques for managing intrusive thoughts, and it works by giving your brain what it wants most, a time and place to process unresolved thoughts. Here is how it works. Choose a specific time each day, 15 to 30 minutes, when you will sit down and deliberately think about whatever is troubling you. 7 in the evening, 9 at night. Whatever time works for your schedule. This is your worry window. This is when rumination is allowed, even encouraged. When a ruminative thought arises outside of this window, you do not fight it. You do not try to suppress it. You acknowledge it and postpone it. You say to yourself, "Not now. I will think about this at 7 tonight." Then you redirect your attention to the present moment using the protocol you have already learned. This does 2 things. First, it trains your brain that not all thoughts require immediate attention. Rumination feels urgent because your brain treats it as a threat that needs to be solved right now. But most of the things you ruminate about are not emergencies. They are unresolved feelings, past events, worries about the future. They can wait. And when you practice postponing them, You teach your brain that waiting is safe, that the thought will not be ignored, just delayed. Second, it gives your brain a container. When 7 o'clock comes, you sit down with a journal or in a quiet space, and you let yourself think about the thing you have been postponing all day. Sometimes you will find that by the time the worry window arrives, the thought has lost its intensity. The thing that felt overwhelming at 10 in the morning feels manageable by 7 at night. Sometimes you will process it fully during that window and feel a sense of release. Sometimes you will realize there is nothing to solve, nothing to fix, and you can let it go. The worry window works because it respects your brain's need to process, while also setting boundaries around how much time and energy you give to rumination. You are not ignoring your pain. You are scheduling it. And that distinction makes all the difference. The second tool is the rewrite exercise. This one addresses the brain's deep need for closure, for an ending that makes sense. When you replay the past, part of what you are searching for is resolution. You are trying to rewrite the conversation so it ends differently. You are trying to undo the mistake. You are trying to make the other person understand, to make yourself feel less ashamed, to create a version of events where you are not hurt or humiliated or rejected. But you cannot change what happened. So the brain keeps searching, keeps replaying, hoping that this time it will find the answer. The rewrite exercise gives your brain permission to imagine the ending you wish had happened. Not as denial, not as a way to avoid reality, but as a way to satisfy the brain's need for closure so it can stop searching. Sit down and write out or imagine in vivid detail what you wish had happened. The conversation where you said the right thing, the moment where you made the better choice, the interaction where the other person responded with kindness instead of cruelty. Make it as real as possible. Imagine how it would have felt, what you would have said, how the other person would have reacted. Give your brain the resolution it is searching for. Then, when you are finished, acknowledge that this is not what happened. This is what you wish had happened, and that is okay. You are allowed to wish things had been different. You are allowed to grieve the ending you did not get. But now that you have imagined it, you can let it go. You have given your brain the closure it was searching for through rumination. You do not need to keep replaying the actual event, trying to force it into a different shape. This exercise is not about living in fantasy. It is about completing the loop. Once the brain has the ending it needs, it can file the memory away and stop returning to it compulsively. Use this tool when you are stuck on a specific event, when the replay feels relentless, when you cannot stop searching for a different outcome. The third tool is the compassionate witness. This addresses the voice you use when you review your past mistakes. Rumination thrives on self-punishment. It is fueled by harsh criticism, by the belief that if you just punish yourself enough, you will not make the same mistake again. But punishment does not lead to growth. It leads to shame, and shame keeps you stuck. When you catch yourself reviewing a past mistake, pay attention to the voice in your head. What are you saying to yourself? I am so stupid. I should have known better. I always mess things up. I am a failure. This is the voice of the inner critic, and it is relentless. Now imagine that a close friend came to you and told you about the same mistake. They are devastated. They are ashamed. They are convinced they are a failure. What would you say to them? You would not call them stupid. You would not tell them they always mess things up. You would offer compassion You would remind them that everyone makes mistakes. You would say, you were doing your best with what you knew at the time. This is the voice of the compassionate witness, and you deserve to hear that voice directed at yourself. When you catch yourself ruminating on a mistake, replace the harsh self-criticism with the words you would offer a friend. I was doing my best with what I knew then. I made a mistake, and that does not make me a failure. I am learning. I am human. This does not define me. It will feel awkward at first. It will feel unearned, maybe even dishonest. But compassion is not about excusing your mistakes. It is about refusing to let shame be the lens through which you see yourself. Rumination feeds on self-punishment. Compassion dismantles it. Practice this voice until it becomes as automatic as the critical one. The fourth tool is the energy audit. This is about identifying the conditions that make rumination stronger and learning to prevent it before it starts. For 1 week, track when rumination is most intense. Keep a simple log. What time of day does it happen? What were you doing right before it started? How did you feel physically? Were you hungry, tired, alone, inactive, stressed? Patterns will emerge. Maybe you ruminate most in the late afternoon when your blood sugar crashes. Maybe it happens when you are lying in bed trying to fall asleep. Maybe it is strongest when you are alone, when there is no external distraction to pull your attention outward. Maybe it intensifies after scrolling social media or after interactions with certain people. Once you identify the patterns, you can address them. If rumination spikes when you are hungry, carry snacks. If it happens when you are trying to sleep, create a wind-down routine that includes grounding exercises. If it is strongest when you are alone, schedule connection with friends or engage in an activity that requires focus. If it follows social media use, limit your exposure or curate what you consume more carefully. Prevention is easier than interruption. If you can identify the conditions that trigger rumination and change those conditions, you reduce the number of times you have to fight the loop. This is not about controlling every variable in your life. It is about noticing what makes you vulnerable and making small adjustments that support your mental clarity. The fifth tool is the gratitude anchor. This addresses the negativity bias, the brain's tendency to focus on loss, on threat, on what is wrong. When your mind pulls toward the past, when you are replaying pain or failure or betrayal, deliberately pause and list 3 specific things in your present life that are good. Not vague things, not generic gratitude, specific, concrete, real things. The warmth of the sun coming through the window, the text message from a friend who checked in on you, the fact that you have clean water to drink, the smell of coffee, the feeling of your dog resting their head on your lap, the song that made you smile this morning, the fact that you are breathing, that your body is working, that you are here. This is not toxic positivity. This is not pretending everything is fine when it is not. This is balance. The brain that sees only loss will replay loss endlessly. The brain that can hold both pain and gratitude, both struggle and beauty, is a brain that has perspective. And perspective interrupts rumination. When you practice the gratitude anchor, you are not dismissing your pain. You are reminding yourself that pain is not the only thing that is real. There is also good. There is also beauty. There is also something worth being present for. And that reminder can be enough to pull you out of the loop and back into the moment. These tools are not meant to be used all at once. You do not need to master everything immediately. Start with one. Practice it until it feels natural. Then add another. Change is not about doing everything. It is about doing something consistently. Maybe you start with the worry window because you need structure, a way to contain the thoughts that feel overwhelming. Maybe you start with the compassionate witness because the harsh self-criticism is what keeps you stuck. Maybe you start with the energy audit because you need to understand your patterns before you can change them. There is no right order. There is only what works for you. As you practice these tools, you will notice that they reinforce each other. The worry window gives you a container. The rewrite exercise gives you closure. The compassionate witness softens the voice that fuels rumination. The energy audit helps you prevent the conditions that trigger it. The gratitude anchor gives you balance. Together, they create a system, a way of relating to your thoughts that is gentler, more skillful, more sustainable than the endless replay. You are building a new relationship with your mind, not one where you control every thought, but one where you have options, where you can notice a thought without being consumed by it, where you can feel pain without drowning in it, where you can remember the past without being trapped there. This is what mastery looks like. Not perfection, but practice. Not the absence of difficult thoughts, but the skill to hold them without losing yourself. The skill to hold difficult thoughts without losing yourself is powerful, but it is not enough on its own. You need more than techniques to interrupt rumination in the moment. You need a life designed to support mental freedom. Rumination does not live in a vacuum. It thrives in certain environments and withers in others. The architecture of your daily life, the choices you make about sleep and movement and connection and purpose, these are the foundations that determine whether freedom is fleeting or sustainable. Start with sleep. This is not negotiable. The exhausted brain is a ruminating brain. When you do not sleep enough, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thought, impulse control, and perspective, becomes impaired. It goes offline. Meanwhile, the amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for fear and threat detection, becomes hyperactive. This is why everything feels worse when you are tired. This is why the thoughts that you can manage during the day become overwhelming at night. This is why rumination intensifies when you are running on 4 or 5 hours of sleep. Lack of sleep does not just make you tired, it changes the way your brain processes emotion. It makes negative experiences feel more intense. It makes you more reactive, more prone to catastrophizing, less able to see perspective. The thought that you can dismiss when you are well rested becomes a spiral when you are exhausted. The memory that you can hold lightly when you have slept becomes a weight you cannot carry when you have not. Sleep is not a luxury. It is mental hygiene. It is the foundation on which everything else is built. Without it, the tools you have learned will be harder to use. The redirect protocol will require more effort. The compassionate witness will feel less accessible. The worry window will not hold because your brain is too tired to contain anything. Prioritize sleep the way you prioritize anything else that keeps you alive. Protect it. Create a routine that supports it. Go to bed at the same time each night. Limit screen time in the hour before sleep. Create a dark, cool, quiet environment. If your mind races when you lie down, use the grounding techniques. Focus on your breath. Feel the weight of your body on the mattress. Do not fight the thoughts. Redirect them gently. Treat sleep as sacred because it is the container that holds your mental clarity. Movement is the second foundation. Physical activity is one of the most effective tools for interrupting rumination, and it works at a biological level. When you ruminate, your body floods with stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones were designed to fuel action, to prepare you to run or fight. But when you are sitting still, replaying a conversation in your head, those hormones have nowhere to go. They circulate in your system, keeping you wired, anxious, stuck. Movement metabolizes those hormones. It burns them off. Walking, running, dancing, lifting weights, stretching, swimming, any form of physical activity creates a biological reset. It shifts your nervous system from sympathetic activation, the fight or flight response, to parasympathetic activation, the rest and restore response. It pulls you out of your head and into your body. The body in motion pulls the mind from the past into the present. You do not need to run a marathon. You do not need to join a gym or commit to an intense program. You just need to move, walk around the block when the rumination starts, do 10 minutes of stretching, dance to one song, lift something heavy. The movement itself is the intervention. It interrupts the loop not through thinking, but through doing. Make movement a non-negotiable part of your day. Not because you should, not because it is good for you in some abstract way, but because it is one of the most reliable ways to shift your mental state when nothing else is working. The mind that is stuck in rumination is often a body that has been still for too long. Move, and the thoughts will follow. Connection is the third foundation. Isolation amplifies rumination. When you are alone with your thoughts, they grow louder, more insistent, more convincing. The story you tell yourself about what happened becomes the only story. There is no other perspective, no challenge, no context, just you and the loop, feeding each other. Connection breaks the isolation. When you confide in a trusted friend, when you speak the rumination aloud, it loses some of its power. The thought that felt overwhelming in your head becomes smaller when it is spoken. You hear it differently. You see it from a distance. And often, the person listening will offer a perspective you hadn't considered, a question that shifts your understanding, a reminder that you are more than the mistake you are replaying. This does not mean you need to share everything with everyone. This is not about oversharing or using other people to process every thought. This is about breaking the cycle of internal rumination by externalizing it. Talk to a therapist. Call a friend you trust. Write in a journal. The method does not matter. What matters is that the thought leaves your head and enters the world, where it can be examined, challenged, held with compassion. Connection also reminds you that you are not alone. When you ruminate, you often believe that you are the only person who has ever made this mistake, felt this pain, struggled this way. But when you talk to others, you realize that everyone carries regret. Everyone has moments they replay. Everyone is navigating the gap between who they are and who they wish they had been. You are not uniquely broken. You are human. And that realization is profoundly liberating. Build connection into your life. Do not wait until you are drowning in rumination to reach out. Create regular touch points with people who care about you. Schedule weekly calls. Join a group. Show up in community. The more connected you are, the less room there is for isolation to amplify the loop. Purpose is the fourth foundation. The mind that is focused on meaningful work, on creativity, on service, on something larger than itself, has less bandwidth for endless replay. Rumination thrives in emptiness, in the gaps where there is nothing to do, no place to direct your energy, no reason to be present. The busy hands quiet the restless mind. This is not about distraction. This is not about filling every moment so you do not have to feel. This is about building a life that is rich in engagement, a life that pulls you forward instead of backward. When you are working on something that matters to you, when you are creating something, when you are contributing to something larger than your own pain, the rumination loses its grip. Not because you are avoiding it, but because you have something more compelling to focus on. Find the work that absorbs you, the hobby that makes you lose track of time, the cause that gives you a reason to get out of bed, the creative project that demands your attention, the service that connects you to others. It does not have to be grand. It does not have to change the world. It just has to matter to you. When rumination arises, ask yourself, what can I do right now that is meaningful? What can I create? What can I contribute? What can I engage with that will pull me out of the loop and into purposeful action? Then do that. Let the doing be the antidote to the thinking. Boundaries are the fifth foundation. You cannot heal in the environment that hurt you. If you are constantly exposed to people, places, or media that trigger rumination, you are making the work harder than it needs to be. Boundaries are not avoidance. They are stewardship. They are the recognition that you have limited energy and that energy should be spent on healing, not on managing constant triggers. Limit your exposure to people who criticize you, who bring up the past, who remind you of your failures. You do not owe anyone access to you. If a relationship consistently triggers rumination, you have the right to step back, to create distance, to protect your peace. Limit your exposure to places that carry painful memories. If going to a certain location pulls you back into the past, you do not have to keep going there. You can choose a different route, a different coffee shop, a different part of town. This is not running away. This is choosing where to invest your attention. Limit your exposure to media that amplifies negativity. If scrolling social media makes you compare yourself to others, if the news cycle floods you with fear, if certain shows or songs trigger painful memories, you have permission to step away. Your mental space is valuable. Guard it. Boundaries are an act of self-respect. They are the acknowledgement that you cannot control everything in your environment, but you can control what you allow into your immediate space. You can choose what you consume, who you spend time with, where you go, and what you expose yourself to. And those choices accumulate. They create the conditions in which freedom is possible. These 5 foundations, sleep, movement, connection, purpose, and boundaries, are not quick fixes. They are the infrastructure of lasting change. You will not implement them all at once. You will not do them perfectly. But every small decision in these directions builds the architecture that supports your mental freedom. When you prioritize sleep, you give your brain the rest it needs to function. When you move your body, you metabolize the stress that fuels rumination. When you connect with others, you break the isolation that amplifies the loop. When you engage with purpose, you redirect your energy toward creation instead of replay. When you set boundaries, you protect yourself from the constant triggers that keep you stuck. Freedom is not found in a single insight. It is not unlocked by one technique. It is built through 1,000 small decisions. The decision to go to bed on time instead of scrolling your phone. The decision to take a walk instead of sitting with the rumination. The decision to call a friend instead of isolating. The decision to work on something meaningful instead of replaying the past. The decision to say no to people and places that drain you. These decisions do not feel dramatic in the moment. They feel ordinary, but they accumulate, and over time, they create a life that supports the person you are becoming. A life where rumination no longer has the same power because the conditions that fed it have changed. A life where the present is more compelling than the past because you have built something worth being present for. This is the architecture of freedom, not a single moment of liberation, but a structure built intentionally, carefully, persistently. A life designed to support mental clarity instead of undermining it. You are the architect, and every choice you make is a brick in the foundation. Every choice you make is a brick in the foundation, and those bricks are not metaphorical. They are physical. They are measurable. They are real changes happening in the structure of your brain. This is not philosophy. This is neuroscience. And understanding the science strengthens your belief in the process, validates your experience, and confirms that the work you are doing is not just hopeful thinking. It is transformation at the level of your biology. Start with neuroplasticity. This is the brain's ability to rewire itself through repeated practice. For decades, scientists believed that the adult brain was fixed, that the neural pathways you developed in childhood were permanent, that you were stuck with the wiring you had. But research has proven that this is not true. Your brain is constantly changing, constantly adapting, constantly forming new connections, and pruning old ones based on what you do, what you practice, what you repeat. Every time you interrupt a rumination loop and redirect your attention, you are engaging in neuroplasticity. You are weakening the neural pathway that says, when I feel discomfort, I ruminate. And you are strengthening the neural pathway that says, when I feel discomfort, I notice it. I ground myself. I redirect my attention. The more you practice the redirect protocol, the stronger that new pathway becomes. The easier it gets. The more automatic it feels. This is not about willpower. This is about repetition. Neurons that fire together, wire together. This is one of the foundational principles of neuroscience. When you ruminate, you are firing a specific sequence of neurons over and over again, and those neurons form strong connections. The pathway becomes a highway, well-traveled, easy to access, automatic. But when you stop traveling that highway and start taking a different route, the old pathway weakens. It does not disappear overnight, but it fades. And the new route, the one where you notice the thought and redirect it, becomes the highway. Change is literal. It is physical. It is measurable. Brain scans show that people who practice mindfulness, who practice redirection, who interrupt ruminative patterns, develop thicker gray matter in regions of the brain associated with emotional regulation and perspective. They show decreased activity in regions associated with anxiety and rumination. This is not wishful thinking. This is observable change in the structure and function of the brain. You are not trying to convince your brain to change. You are training it to change through practice. And every time you use the tools, every time you interrupt the loop, you are literally rewiring your brain. The work you are doing is real. The progress you are making is measurable. And the more you practice, the stronger the new pathways become, until redirection is no longer something you have to force. It is something your brain does naturally. Now let me explain what is happening in your brain when you ruminate. There is a network of brain regions called the default mode network, the DMN. This network is active when you are at rest, when you are not engaged in a specific task, when your mind is wandering. It is the part of your brain that thinks about the past. imagines the future, reflects on yourself and others. In healthy amounts, this network is essential. It allows for self-reflection, for planning, for creativity. But in people prone to rumination, the default mode network becomes hyperactive. It does not turn off. It is constantly scanning for problems, for threats, for unresolved issues. It pulls you into the past. It rehearses future scenarios. It replays conversations and mistakes and failures. It creates the mental noise that keeps you from being present. Research shows that people who ruminate have an overactive default mode network and difficulty shifting out of it. Their brain gets stuck in the mode of internal focus, of self-referential thinking, of endless analysis. And because the DMN is so active, it drowns out the task-positive network, the TPN, which is the network of brain regions engaged in purposeful action, in focus, in engagement with the external world. This is why rumination feels so consuming. Your brain is literally stuck in the default mode network, replaying the past, and it cannot shift into the task-positive network, which would pull you into the present moment. The two networks are inversely related. When one is active, the other quiets. When you are ruminating, the DMN is dominant, and the TPN is suppressed. When you are focused on a task, the TPN is active, and the DMN quiets. The tools you have learned, mindfulness, grounding, redirection, all of these work by shifting activity from the default mode network to the task-positive network. When you ground yourself by feeling your feet on the floor, when you redirect your attention by counting backward. When you engage in purposeful movement or meaningful work, you are activating the TPN and quieting the DMN. You are pulling your brain out of the mode of rumination and into the mode of presence. This is not about eliminating the default mode network. You need it. You need the ability to reflect, to plan, to imagine. But you need balance. You need the ability to shift between networks depending on what the moment requires. And the more you practice redirection, the better your brain becomes at making that shift. The easier it becomes to move from rumination to presence, from the past to the now. Cognitive behavioral research provides additional validation. Decades of studies show that rumination prolongs depression, increases anxiety, and impairs problem-solving. It creates the illusion of productivity, the sense that you are working through something, analyzing it, trying to understand it. But in reality, rumination does not lead to insight. It leads to paralysis. When you ruminate, you are not processing the past. You are rehearsing it. You are replaying the same thoughts in the same patterns without reaching new conclusions. This is why rumination feels exhausting, but does not lead to resolution. You are thinking in circles. And the more you think in circles, the deeper the circle becomes, the harder it is to break out of. Studies show that people who ruminate after a stressful event take longer to recover emotionally, experience more intense and prolonged negative emotions, and are more likely to develop depression and anxiety. Rumination is not helping you cope. It is preventing you from coping. It keeps the wound open. It keeps the memory active. It keeps the pain alive. The brain that replays endlessly is not processing. It is stuck. And the way out is not more thinking. It is interruption. It is redirection. It is the willingness to stop rehearsing and start engaging with the present. Research on self-compassion provides another layer of scientific support. Studies conducted by psychologist Kristin Neff and others show that people who treat themselves with kindness, who speak to themselves the way they would speak to a friend, recover from setbacks faster, experience less rumination, and demonstrate greater resilience than those who practice harsh self-criticism. This is counterintuitive for many people. You have been taught that being hard on yourself will motivate you to do better, that self-criticism is necessary for growth. But the research shows the opposite. Self-criticism activates the threat response in your brain. It floods your system with cortisol. It puts you in a defensive state where learning and growth are harder, not easier. Self-compassion, on the other hand, activates the caregiving system in your brain. It releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. It creates a sense of safety. And when you feel safe, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thought and perspective, comes back online. You can see the situation more clearly. You can learn from it. You can move forward. People who practice self-compassion are less likely to ruminate because they do not punish themselves for making mistakes. They acknowledge the mistake. They feel the pain. But they do not spiral into shame. They treat themselves with the same kindness they would offer someone they love. And that kindness creates space for healing. This is not about letting yourself off the hook. This is not about avoiding accountability. This is about recognizing that shame and self-punishment do not lead to growth. They lead to rumination, and the way out of rumination is not harsher criticism. It is gentler, more compassionate engagement with yourself. All of this research points to the same conclusion. You are not broken. Your brain is not malfunctioning. It is following predictable patterns, patterns that neuroscience can explain, patterns that research has documented, patterns that can be interrupted, reshaped, and replaced. The hyperactive default mode network can be quieted through mindfulness and redirection. The neural pathways of rumination can be weakened through practice. The self-critical voice that fuels the loop can be softened through self-compassion. The depression and anxiety prolonged by rumination can be reduced by interrupting the cycle. This is not magic. This is mechanics. This is how the brain works. And understanding how it works gives you power. It replaces the belief that you are stuck with the knowledge that you can change. It replaces the shame of, I should be over this by now, with the understanding that your brain is doing what evolution trained it to do, and you can train it to do something different. The science validates your experience. It confirms that rumination is real, that it has measurable effects on your brain and your mental health, and that the tools you are learning are not just helpful. They are evidence-based interventions that change the structure and function of your brain. Every time you use the redirect protocol, you are engaging neuroplasticity. Every time you shift from the default mode network to the task positive network, you are creating balance. Every time you practice self-compassion, you are reducing rumination and building resilience. Every time you interrupt the loop, you are weakening the old pathway and strengthening the new one. This is not a hope. This is a certainty. Your brain will change if you practice. The pathways will rewire if you repeat. The default mode network will quiet if you redirect. The self-criticism will soften if you speak with kindness. The rumination will lessen if you interrupt it consistently. You are not trying to do the impossible. You are working with the natural capacity of your brain to adapt, to learn, to change based on what you practice. And the more you understand the science, the more you trust the process. The more you trust the process, the more you practice. And the more you practice, the more your brain changes. This is the cycle of transformation, and it is already beginning. The cycle of transformation is already beginning, but transformation is not tested in calm moments. It is tested when life gets hard, when you lose your job, when someone betrays you, when you make a choice you regret and cannot undo, when the past comes roaring back with such force that every tool you have learned feels fragile, insufficient, overwhelmed by the weight of what you are carrying. This is when the work becomes real. This is when you discover whether the foundation you have built can hold. Let me show you what that looks like. You lost your job 3 weeks ago. The termination meeting plays on an endless loop. You see the conference room, the HR director sliding the folder across the table, your manager avoiding eye contact. The words, "We are letting you go," echoing in your mind like a verdict. You replay every mistake you made in the months leading up to that moment. Every project that went wrong, every deadline you missed, every interaction where you could have done better. You are convinced that if you had just worked harder, been smarter, said the right thing, you would still have your job. You are in the grocery store, standing in the cereal aisle, and the panic rises. Your chest tightens. Your breath shortens. The fluorescent lights feel too bright. You are not in the grocery store anymore. You are back in that conference room, hearing those words again. The shame floods your system as if it is happening right now, not 3 weeks ago. You remember the redirect protocol. You name it. I am ruminating about being fired. Just naming it creates a crack in the trance. You ground yourself. You feel your feet on the floor. You notice the cool air from the refrigerated section on your arms. You look around and name 5 things you can see. The red box of cereal, the yellow price tag, the woman with the cart 2 aisles over, the reflection of the lights on the tile floor, the green sign marking the exit. You are here, in this store, in this moment, not in that conference room. You challenge the thought. Is thinking about this right now helping me solve a problem or causing me pain? You realize you are not preparing for an interview. You are not learning from the experience. You are just punishing yourself, replaying the worst moment of your life while trying to buy groceries. It is not productive. It is optional. You redirect. You count backward from 100 by 7s. 100, 93, 86. The numbers require focus. The rumination fades. You finish your shopping. You leave the store. The panic has passed. You didn't spiral. You used the tools and they worked. Later that evening, you sit down for your worry window. 7 o'clock. 15 minutes. You let yourself think about the termination. You write in your journal. You feel the anger, the shame, the fear about the future. You do not try to fix it. You do not try to make it okay. You just let yourself feel it, in this container, for this amount of time. And when the 15 minutes are over, you close the journal. You stand up. You move on with your evening. The thought tried to return at 9, but you told it, "Not now. I already processed this today." And it quieted. You reach out to a friend instead of isolating. You tell them what happened. You cry. They listen. They remind you that losing a job does not mean you are a failure. They remind you of your skills, your resilience, your worth beyond employment. The rumination loses some of its power because it is no longer just you and the loop. There is perspective now. There is connection. You are not alone. Let me show you another scenario. You were blindsided by betrayal. Someone you trusted, someone you loved, lied to you. And now you cannot stop replaying every interaction, searching for the signs you missed. You wake at 2 in the morning, and the thoughts are waiting. Did they ever love you? How long were they lying? What else did you miss? You replay conversations from months ago, analyzing tone, looking for clues, trying to solve a mystery that will not give you peace, even if you solve it. You lie there, exhausted, but wired. And you remember the protocol. You ground yourself. You feel the weight of your body on the mattress. You notice the pillow under your head. You feel the cool air on your face. You take a slow breath in through your nose, counting to 4. You hold it. You exhale through your mouth, counting to 6. You do this 10 times. Your heart rate slows. Your body begins to relax. You challenge the thought. Is thinking about this right now helping me solve a problem or causing me pain? You realize that analyzing every past interaction will not change what happened. It will not give you the answers you want. It will not undo the betrayal. Thinking about this now will not change what happened. I can choose rest. You redirect. You focus on your breath. In for 4. Out for 6. Your mind wanders back to the betrayal. You notice it. You do not judge it. You bring your attention back to the breath. You do this 20 times, 30 times, however many it takes, and eventually sleep comes. Not because you solved the problem, but because you chose rest over rumination. The next morning, you use the rewrite exercise. You imagine the conversation you wish you could have with this person. You imagine them apologizing, explaining, giving you the closure you need. You write it out in vivid detail, and when you are finished, you acknowledge that this is not what happened. This is what you wish had happened, and you let it go. You have given your brain the closure it was searching for. You do not need to keep replaying the actual betrayal, trying to force it into a different shape. Over the following weeks, you practice the compassionate witness. When the rumination starts, when you replay the betrayal and start punishing yourself for not seeing it sooner, you stop. You speak to yourself the way you would speak to a friend who was hurt. You were trusting someone you loved. That is not a weakness. You did not fail. You were betrayed. And that says more about them than it does about you. Let me show you one more. You are a parent, and you made a choice you regret. You yelled at your child. You said something harsh. You see the look on their face, the hurt in their eyes, and the image plays on repeat. You are convinced you have damaged them, that this moment will define their childhood, that you are failing as a parent. Every time you look at them, you replay the moment. Every time they are quiet, you wonder if it is because of what you said. You use the compassionate witness. You stop the harsh voice that says you are a terrible parent. You replace it with the voice you would use if a friend came to you with the same regret. You were overwhelmed. You made a mistake. That does not make you a bad parent. It makes you human. You were doing your best with what you knew then. You redirect your energy into present repair rather than past punishment. You apologize to your child. You explain that you were wrong, that you should not have yelled, that your anger was not their fault. You ask for forgiveness. You show them, through your actions in the days that follow, that one mistake does not define your relationship. You are present. You are kind. You are engaged. You are repairing in real time instead of replaying in your mind. The rumination still comes. But now you notice it faster. You interrupt it sooner. You redirect more skillfully. And when you slip, when you spend an hour replaying, before you remember to use the tools, you offer yourself compassion. You do not add shame to the weight you are already carrying. This is what application under pressure looks like It is messy. It is imperfect. It is full of setbacks and stumbles and moments when the tools feel inadequate against the force of the pain. But this is also where growth happens. This is where you learn that the foundation you have built can hold, even when it is tested. Setbacks will happen. You will have days when the rumination feels as strong as it ever did. You will have moments when you forget to use the tools, when you are hours into the loop before you realize what is happening. You will have experiences that are so painful, so overwhelming, that no amount of redirection feels sufficient. This is normal. This is part of the process. The measure of progress is not perfection. It is recovery time. How quickly can you notice the loop? How gently can you redirect? How much compassion can you offer yourself when you slip? 6 months ago, you might have spent 3 days replaying a painful event before you noticed you were stuck. Now you notice in 3 hours. That is progress. 6 months ago, you might have needed an hour to calm yourself after a rumination spiral. Now you need 15 minutes. That is progress. 6 months ago, you might have berated yourself for ruminating. Now you offer yourself kindness. That is progress. You are not aiming for the absence of difficult thoughts. You are building the ability to hold them without being consumed. You are learning composure, the capacity to stay grounded even when life is hard. You are learning adaptation, the skill to adjust your approach when one tool is not working and try another. You are learning grace, the willingness to be gentle with yourself when you stumble. Freedom is not a destination. It is a practice. It is the daily choice to notice, to ground, to challenge, to redirect. It is the decision to reach out instead of isolate, to sleep instead of spiral, to move instead of ruminate. It is the willingness to speak to yourself with compassion instead of cruelty. It is the courage to live in the present even when the past is calling. You have the tools now. You know the protocol. You understand the science. You have the foundation. And when life gets hard, when the past comes roaring back, you will use what you have learned. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but with skill, with practice, with the growing confidence that you can hold pain without being destroyed by it. That is the transformation. That is the freedom you are building. That is the freedom you are building. And somewhere along this journey, without announcing itself, something shifted. You stopped trying to stop replaying the past. You became someone who lives in the present. This is not a moment you can point to on a calendar. It is not a single breakthrough or revelation. It is the slow accumulation of 1,000 small choices, 1,000 interruptions, 1,000 redirections, until one day you realize that the past no longer has the grip it once did. You are no longer fighting rumination. You have integrated the tools so deeply that they are simply how you move through the world now. Reflect on where you started. You were in the loop, trapped in automatic replay, living half in yesterday and half in today, never fully present, never fully free. The past felt more real than the present because you spent more time there. You believed that if you just thought hard enough, analyzed deeply, enough, replayed thoroughly enough, you would finally find the answer that made it all make sense. But the answer never came. The loop just deepened. You moved into the observer stage. You began to notice the pattern. You caught yourself mid-rumination and thought, I am doing it again. Awareness was frustrating at first, because you could see the loop but not stop it. You watched yourself ruminate, felt the exhaustion and shame of being stuck, and wondered if you would ever be free. But awareness was essential. You could not change what you could not see, and seeing was the first step. Then you became the interrupter. You learned the redirect protocol. You learned to name the rumination, to ground yourself in the present moment, to challenge unproductive thoughts, to redirect your mental energy. You practiced the worry window, the rewrite exercise, the compassionate witness. You tracked your patterns through the energy audit. You anchored yourself with gratitude. You built a toolkit, and you used it. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but consistently, persistently, with growing skill. You built the foundations for long-term success. You prioritized sleep as mental hygiene, recognizing that the exhausted brain is a ruminating brain. You moved your body to metabolize stress and pull your mind into the present. You reached out for connection instead of isolating. You engaged with purpose, filling your life with meaningful work and creativity. You set boundaries, protecting yourself from the people and places and media that triggered endless replay. You designed a life that supports mental freedom instead of undermining it. You learned the science. You understood neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself through practice. You saw that every time you interrupted the loop, you were weakening the old neural pathway and strengthening a new one. You learned about the default mode network and how rumination keeps you trapped in internal focus, and how redirection shifts you into the task-positive network, pulling you into purposeful action. You saw the research on self-compassion, how kindness leads to resilience while self-criticism fuels the spiral. You replaced shame with understanding. You replaced the belief that you were broken with the knowledge that your brain was following predictable patterns, patterns that could be interrupted and reshaped. And then you became the author. You integrated the past into your story without being controlled by it. You learned to remember without reliving. You processed pain into wisdom. The past became a chapter in your life, not the whole book. You stopped searching for closure in endless replay and started creating closure through practice, through compassion, through the deliberate choice to live here, now, in this moment. This is who you are now. You are someone who notices when your mind drifts into the past and gently calls it back. Not with force, not with shame, not with the harsh voice that says, "You should be over this by now," but with the same kindness you would offer a friend. "Hey, you are doing it again. Come back. Come back to now. Come back to here. Come back to this breath, this moment, this life that is waiting for you. You are someone who honors your pain without being defined by it. You do not pretend the past did not happen. You do not deny the hurt or minimize the loss. You acknowledge it. You feel it. You give it space when it needs space. But you do not let it consume you. You do not let it become the only lens through which you see yourself. You are more than what happened to you. You are more than the mistakes you made. You are more than the betrayals you endured. You are the person who survived all of it and chose to keep going. You are someone who learns from mistakes without punishing yourself endlessly. You review what went wrong, not to shame yourself, but to understand. You ask, what can I learn from this? What would I do differently? What do I need to change going forward? And then you move on. You do not replay the mistake for days or weeks or months. You do not use it as evidence that you are fundamentally flawed. You recognize that mistakes are part of being human, that learning requires failure. that growth happens in the gap between who you were and who you are becoming. You are someone who lives here, now, in this moment, with all its imperfect beauty. You are present with your partner when they speak, not conversing with ghosts. You are engaged with your child when they share their day, not reviewing your past failures as a parent. You are focused on your work, not replaying the project that went wrong 3 years ago. You notice the warmth of the sun, the taste of your coffee, the sound of laughter, the feeling of being alive right now in this unrepeatable moment. The past still comes. Memories still surface. Painful moments still revisit you, but they no longer have automatic power. You can hold them without being consumed. You can feel the sadness without spiraling into rumination. You can acknowledge the regret without drowning in shame. You have built the capacity to be with difficulty, to sit with discomfort, to experience pain without needing to fix it or fight it or replay it endlessly. This is the transformation, not the absence of difficult thoughts, but the ability to hold them with grace, not the erasure of the past, but the integration of it, not the elimination of pain, but the freedom to feel it without being defined by it. And now, look at what comes next. The energy you once spent replaying the past is now invested in building the future. The hours you used to lose to rumination are now spent on work that matters, on relationships that nourish you, on creativity that brings you alive. The attention once consumed by old wounds is now focused on new growth. You are learning new skills. You are taking risks you would have avoided before. You are saying yes to opportunities that once felt too vulnerable. You are showing up fully in your life because you are no longer half living in the past. The life you once lived in, shadows, is now lived in full color. You are not waiting for the other shoe to drop. You are not bracing for the next betrayal. You are not holding back your joy in case something goes wrong. You are here, fully, imperfectly, beautifully here. And it shows. People notice. They feel your presence. They sense that something has shifted. You are lighter, freer, more engaged, more alive. This is not because your life is perfect. It is not because you never experience pain or loss or disappointment. It is because you have learned to be with what is without being trapped by what was. You have learned that the past is part of your story, but it is not the only story you tell. You are the author now. You decide what your past means. You decide which memories you revisit and which ones you release. You decide how much time and energy you give to what happened and how much you invest in what is happening now. You decide whether the story you tell yourself is one of victimhood or resilience, of failure or learning, of loss or survival. The past will always be part of your story. The hurt will always have happened. The mistakes will always be real. The losses will always be losses. You cannot change what occurred, but you can change the story you tell about it. You can choose a narrative that honors your pain without being imprisoned by it. You can frame your experiences as lessons instead of life sentences. You can see yourself as someone who has been through hard things and came out the other side, not unscathed, but whole. Write the next chapter. Not the chapter where you finally fix the past. Not the chapter where everything that hurt you is undone. But the chapter where you live fully in the present. Where you build something meaningful. Where you love without holding back. Where you risk without being paralyzed by the fear of failure. Where you show up again and again in your own life, choosing presence over rumination, connection over isolation, compassion over self-punishment. This is the life you are building. Not a perfect life, not a life without pain, but a life where pain does not have the final word, a life where the past is integrated, honored, learned from, and then released. A life where you are no longer a captive to your own mind, but a conscious participant in your own experience. You have come so far, from the loop to the author, from automatic replay to intentional presence, from shame to understanding, from paralysis to practice, from isolation to connection, from rumination to freedom. And this is not the end. This is the beginning of a life where you are no longer fighting the past, but building the future, where you are no longer trapped by old wounds, but growing through new experiences, where you are no longer defined by what happened, but by how you choose to move forward. You are the person you have been becoming all along, the person who can hold pain without being destroyed by it, the person who can remember without reliving, the person who can learn without punishing, the person who can live fully and presently in this moment with all its imperfect possibility. The past will always be part of your story, but it does not have to be the only story you tell. You are the author now. The pen is in your hand. The page is blank. Write the next chapter. Write it with presence. Write it with courage. Write it with compassion. Write it with the knowledge that you are free.